Will you all please join me in Gassho and repeat the Nembutsu with me. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandabs, namandabs, namandabs. Good morning. Are all the Dharma School students here, are you all back in school? Is your winter break done? Yeah. Do you like being back in school? Oh, good. Very good. I didn't hear anything from the Lotus class in the front. I hear it all from the younger ones. So, Lotus class, are you guys okay? Wonderful, wonderful. Well, today for my Dharma talk, I'd like to continue our discussion about our great teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha. For those of you who remember, Shakyamuni Buddha was once named Prince Siddhartha, who was a prince of King Suddhodana and Queen Maya. King Suddhodana did all he could to make sure that his son would grow up to be just like him. For the fathers in the audience, how many of you want to make sure that your children are just like you when you grow up? No? Yes? No? Well, King Suddhodana wanted his son Siddhartha to be just like him. And so what did he do to make sure that Prince Siddhartha would grow up to be just like him? He shrouded him with wealth. He gave him everything that he could ever want. He only showed him pretty things and only gave him the best foods. But still, Siddhartha was unsatisfied. And so Siddhartha left the palace and went into the forest and realized that in order to attain enlightenment or to end the suffering that he saw all around him, he himself would have to conquer his own sense of self-desire and self-importance and ego and want. So what did he do? Well, he thought, first, since I was shrouded and given everything I ever wanted, since I was given everything I could ever want, since I was given the best foods, since I was given the best toys, I was given the best this or that, I'm going to totally deprive myself. So for you Dharma School students, deprive means like to refuse or to give up or to, or to just get rid of. So all you Dharma School students, show of hands, who's willing to give up their smartphone? Oh, you're willing to give up your smartphone? Very good, very good. Are you willing to give up your smartphone? None of you are willing to give. Oh, you really? Okay, give me your smartphone. So again, right? Like giving these things up. He gave up everything, but not only did he give up the smartphones. Well, okay, Prince Siddhartha. I'm sorry. This is 2,500 years ago. Prince Siddhartha did not have a smartphone. But not only did he give up his best things, his best clothes, he gave up the food, okay? So for Dharma School students, I'm certain you have probably a favorite restaurant you love to go to, right? You probably think about going to that restaurant every day. Now think about never going. Now think about only eating 1 grain of rice per day. 1 grain of rice per day. Dharma School students, who can do that? Who can only eat 1 grain of rice per day? None of you should be raising your hands. Very good. Good. How many Dharma School students, how many of you like rice? Okay, good. Everybody. Yeah, everybody raised their hand. So only 1 grain of rice per day. Okay? Only 1 grain of rice per day. And so then Prince Siddhartha realized, I can't do this either. I can't continue this way. If I continue this way, I'm going to perish. I'm not going to survive. And then Prince Siddhartha remembered something. So for Dharma School students, raise your hand. How many of you play a stringed instrument like a violin or a guitar? Violin, guitar, cello, right, bass. So you all know that in order to play this guitar or cello, you have to tighten the strings a little bit, right? You have to sort of tune your strings. So Prince Siddhartha remembered a very nice story of something he observed on the river when he was meditating. He observed a music teacher teaching his student And the teacher said, if you tighten the string too much, the string is going to break. But if you leave the string too loose, it won't play, or it will sound weird. So, Prince Siddhartha then realized there's somewhere in the middle. There is a path in the middle somewhere that I can definitely achieve enlightenment. And this is what set him on the path of enlightenment. So, Prince Siddhartha actually accepted food from a very kind woman who saw that he was hungry. He accepted food. And he realized that this is the way to enlightenment, finding some place in the middle. Now, I know that a lot of the Lotus class probably does some type of sport or exercise. So you have to realize, right, if you just train, you think to yourself, right, like you're training and you're training and you're training and you're practicing every day, maybe like 2 hours a day or something. If you do that 7 days a week without stopping, your body is not going to thank you for that. It's actually going to hurt your body. So yes, it's very important to train very hard, but you also have to take a break, right? Now, of course, the hard part is finding how much of a break do you take and how much training you do. Because sometimes if we take a break, it becomes easy to fall into the habit of going, oh, well, I'll just do it tomorrow, or oh, well, I'll just leave it till the next day. Oh, well, I took a break, what's one more day if I take a break, right? We start to think that way too. So as human beings, as unenlightened beings, it's very easy for us to fall to one end of the extreme and to the other end of the extreme. It's too easy for some reason. It never seems easy to keep the balance in the middle, which is where Prince Siddhartha was when he became enlightened. So one more story I want to share with you about the Buddha before we go. And I actually have to pull out my smartphone myself to make sure that I say his name correctly. But there was a story that I was told when I was in Dharma School about another story of the Buddha. So this is after Prince Siddhartha is enlightened, okay? Prince Siddhartha becomes Shakyamuni Buddha. Okay. So there is a famous story of the Buddha and a thief and a robber, okay? And the thief's name, okay, Dharma School students, put your listening ears on. Remember that? Put your listening ear. There's the thief's name is Angulimala. Let's say that together, Dharma School students. Angulimala. Angulimala. Let's say that one more time. Angulimala. So Angulimala was known for being a very fierce warrior, but also a very kind of not a very nice person. Angulimala was famous for ambushing travelers on the road and stealing their possessions, stealing their gold. He was very strong and very famous and robbed, noble and poor alike, and just developed a reputation for being a very, very not a nice person. So one day, he actually saw the Buddha walking on the path. And Angulimala said, "Ha! What a feat it would be. What a wonderful thing it would be if I, the great Angulimala, would be able to slay the Buddha and steal the Buddha's possessions. I will become the most famous thief, and everyone, if I'm able to take down the Buddha, everybody would be fearful of me," right? So Angulimala waits in hiding, and as he sees the Buddha pass, and as the Buddha passes him, he jumps out of the bushes and starts running after the Buddha. Okay, how many of the Lotus class or anybody else or the other Dharma School students? How many of you do running or jogging or running? Okay. Oh yes, up there. Wonderful. Yes. Very good. Do you think you can run very fast? You probably can. Yeah, you probably can run very fast. I'm certain every single one of the Dharma School students here can run really, really fast. You probably could run from one side of this street to the next in, let's see, I'd say 30 seconds. You think? One side from 19th to 17th. You probably could run in probably like 30 seconds, right? 30 seconds, maybe? Well, anyways, Angulimala was really fast. He was a strong guy. This was Angulimala was very strong. Yet, interestingly, as he was running after the Buddha's distance increased. How many of you have seen that before, right? Like when you see like a person running really fast and then all of a sudden what you're running towards seems to get further and further away. And Angulimala is running as hard as he can. So think he's like sweating, he's panting, he's huffing, he has a sword in his hand, and he's just running as fast as he can. And no matter how fast he runs, the Buddha, and the Buddha, by the way, is just walking. It's just walking. So doesn't that seem like a funny image, right? Angulimala is running as fast as he can, and the Buddha is still getting further and further away. Finally, the Buddha turns around and faces Angulimala. And Angulimala is just tired, right? He is in no condition whatsoever to rob the Buddha or to even inflict any harm. And he drops his sword and he just asks the Buddha, "What magic is this? How did you do that?" And the Buddha said to him, "I did nothing. I was walking the whole time, just at regular speed. You, Angulimala, were running further and further away from the truth. You were driven by your greed, anger, and ignorance." Remember, it's Dharma School students, those are the three poisons: greed, anger, and ignorance. And your desire was so strong that no matter how fast you ran towards me, you were in truth running away from the truth. So, Angulimala throws down his sword and bows to the Buddha and becomes a loyal disciple of his. And there's actually more stories about Angulimala after he becomes a Buddhist monk. But the lesson here is that sometimes we as people know what the truth is. We as Dharma School students, we know what the truth can be. But sometimes it's very hard for us to accept the truth. But thanks to the people like Shakyamuni Buddha, we are made aware of the truth. At first, we may not like some truths that we see. And so we do our best to kind of run away from them, or we do our best to avoid them, right? So I'm certain some Dharma School students, and I'm included in this, by the way, like when I was a kid, maybe when I'm an adult too, but maybe I did something I wasn't so proud of, but then, and my parents get home, and I know, when I confess this to my parents, I'm gonna get in trouble. But then ultimately, I got in more trouble if I didn't tell them, right? So I tried to avoid it. I tried to be like, maybe if I don't say anything, maybe if I don't do anything or say anything, they won't notice. But Dharma School students, let me tell you something. Your parents always know. Your parents will always find out. Always, okay? So when you look to your parents, right, if there's something that you're hiding or something that you're concealing, you can run, but it won't be hidden for very long. So this is the story of Angulimala and the Buddha. The very important story of how, as far away as we try to run from the truth will always come to us. So thank you very much, Dharma School students, for coming today. Please keep this story in mind, and please join me in Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandabs, namandabs, namandabs. Will you all please join me in Gassho? As a result, the emperor and his ministers, acting against the Dharma and violating human rectitude, became enraged and embittered. As a result, Master Genku, the eminent founder who had enabled the true essence of the Pure Land Way to spread vigorously in Japan, and a number of his followers, without receiving any deliberation of their alleged crimes, were summarily sentenced to death or were disposed of their monkhood, given secular names, and consigned to distant banishment. I was amongst the latter. Hence, I am now neither a monk nor one in worldly life. For this reason, I have taken the term Toku as my name. Master Genku and his disciples being banished to the provinces in different directions passed a period of 5 years in exile. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Nam Mandas. Nam Mandas. Good morning again, everyone. Please forgive me as I am a little exhausted from this past week. For those of you who do not know, we in the Buddhist Churches of America now have about 11 new Tokudo candidates. So for those of you who do not know, Tokudo, T-O-K-U-D-O, Tokudo, is the first step or the first initial ordination in becoming a Buddhist priest, a Jodo Shinshu priest. So once you receive Tokudo, so this is actually a very big development. We have some wonderful candidates who coming from all over the United States to participate in the session. I was asked to go down and help teach the rituals and chanting session along with my senior minister, Reverend Rinban Kusunoki of the Seattle Betsuin. Both of us received the special certified chanting license from the Nishihonganji, and so we are asked to go down and teach the chanting and the rituals to these new group of Tokudo. And I can tell you that the new Tokudo candidates, they are very eager to learn. They're a wonderful group of people, and they all very much love the teachings of Shinran Shonin. But it's hard because sometimes we don't sort of realize what goes into learning to becoming a priest or a minister. Even something as so simple as moving on the onaijin. When I come out during the Kancho bell, it seems easy, right? It seems like, well, he just steps out and bows and turns and bows again and then goes to his seat. What's hard about that, right? But in actuality, there is a set time I'm supposed to exit or come out from behind the gomon or behind Amida, on the fifth, on the start of the fifth, the 5 rings of the Kancho bell. So there's actually a very specific time that I'm supposed to come out. What's even harder is when you have a group of about 6 or 7 people on the shrine area, and they all have to move in perfect unison. So we in the Jodo Shinshu or the Buddhist Churches of America are very much used to seeing probably just 1, maybe 2 ministers go onto the onaijin. It is a very interesting sight to see when you have 6 or 7 go up there. But also, what am I talking about? I read this quote today from the postscript of Shinran Shonin's Kyogyo Shinsho. And it sounds quite strong, it sounds like a very strong language. But in actuality, this particular passage is important because of the latter part where he says, "Hence I am now neither a monk nor one in worldly life." So this is a very common phrase in Jodo Shinshu, in the teachings of Jodo Shinshu, that talks about us as priests of Jodo Shinshu. You probably notice, right, that we don't always walk around. Every time you see me here at the temple, right, I'm not always in my fuho wagesa or in my priest clothing. I'm sometimes in Western clothing. And this is also very important to remember because it reminds us as Jodo Shinshu priests that we are amongst the people too. When you go to other schools of Buddhism, like Tendai or Shingon, those priests have to be in their robes pretty much, not 100% of the time, but when they are in public settings or when we're out in public or in everything and they go outside of the temple, they have to be in their robes. So it is very much, it's very aware that they are Buddhist priests. You also notice one of the other big things about other Buddhist schools is that for many of them, they shave their heads. Yes? They shave their heads. And they always have to keep their heads shaved. Tendai priests of the Tendai school of Buddhism and Shingon priests all have to make sure that their heads are kept shaven. Tibetan monks are allowed to let it grow out a little bit, but then they have to shave it again, and they let it grow out a little bit and shave it again. Chinese priests and Taiwanese priests have to shave their heads, like not every day, but kind of constantly to make sure that it's always bald. Same thing with Tendai priests. But for us in Jodo Shinshu, one of the characteristics is that we are allowed to keep our hair. And it's not because necessarily that we're stylish or that we want to be vain, but we want to also make sure that it's known that we are still unenlightened beings. We are still unenlightened people. Yet at the same time, we are expected to have a certain command or a certain, a command of knowledge when it comes to the Jodo Shinshu scriptures, the teachings of the Buddha, and other sources of sutras in our daily lives as well. So this is where I was talking in my previous Dharma talk about kind of going too much to one extreme, but then not too much to the other extreme. I found this very interesting in Jodo Shinshu that we as Buddhist priests are kind of in the middle. Now, of course, when you go to Nishihonganji, the head temple in Kyoto, you will definitely see the priests wearing their fuho wagesa, and this is, by the way, this is what this is, right? This is a fuho. This black robe that I'm wearing is called a fuho, and then this sash that I wear around my neck a lot of the times is called a wagesa, okay? And you will see them wear that, quite a bit around when they're giving tours or when they're doing official business at the head temple. But at the end of the day, lots of them, they put their robes away and they put on regular clothes and they go out and they go to the grocery store just like you and me, and then they go to some of them go to izakaya in Japan. For those of you who don't know, izakaya are establishments that are for drinking and eating food and are drinking wine and eating food. But again, right, at the same time, when it comes to what we have to know or what we have to be able to perform, that is almost at the same level as other Buddhist priests as well. So this is where we, kind of are in the middle when it comes to who we are as Jodo Shinshu priests. So one of the other examples I can give, of course, is, a couple of the times now of this year, I have to fly on an airplane to go down to California to help with these sessions. And every now and then I sit next to a person who is, chatty or likes to talk, and other times there are people who, I just want to keep to myself and don't want to, do anything. But one of the trips, of course, I was sitting next to a person who was quite chatty, and they wanted to, talk to me and get to know me. And so they asked, right, well, what do you do? And I said, well, actually, I'm a Buddhist priest. And they go, really? And they looked at me and they go, you don't look like a Buddhist priest, right? I was in my khaki pants and a buttoned-up shirt, and I mean, for all they knew, I looked like a salesman or something. But they go, and I go, no, I'm a Buddhist priest, see? And I actually had one of my business cards with me. And then they took it and they go, Reverend, wow. So, right, there's a way that American society or other societies have an image of what a Buddhist priest is supposed to look like. I wasn't wearing saffron or orange robes. My head was not shaved. I ate the chicken dinner one time when I was on an airplane. And so, we as Jodo Shinshu priests I like this because we kind of shatter these preconceived notions of what a Buddhist priest is supposed to look like. But yet at the same time, there also has to be, a certain command of knowledge as well when they ask me questions about Buddhism, when they ask me questions about, this or that. And I think this is what Shinran was getting at when he talks about the role of a Jodo Shinshu priest in our lives. So it's actually kind of important for the Tokudo candidates to know this as well, right? I think for some of us, right, or for a lot of people who initially see Tokudo, it's, I get to wear a robe, I get to stand on the podium and speak to people. But then they also don't realize, all the training that goes into the sutra chanting that you have to do, the rituals that you have to perform, your command of how you have to, of the Buddhist knowledge, and it's particularly our school of Jodo Shinshu, you have to know. And one of the biggest hurdles that all Tokudo candidates have to do is they have to memorize all 120 lines of the Shoshin Nembutsuge. So for those of you who were with us on Ho'onko last weekend, we actually chanted the entirety of the Shoshin Nembutsuge with the wasan in both services, right? And we split it up. We did the Shoshin Ge at one service and then the wasan in the next service. But for that first chant, if you're going to become a Jodo Shinshu priest, you have to have that entire chant memorized. And you have to memorize 2 versions of it. So, this is, I think, really important when people think about, oh, maybe I could become a priest. Because on the surface, of course, when you look at what I do on the onaijin or, the way I walk, it doesn't look so hard, right? But at the same time, once you start getting into, oh, you have to know this, 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 right? This becomes really, I think, eye-opening sometimes. And it becomes eye-opening for me again when I go down and I help a lot of these Tokudo candidates who wish to become Buddhist priests themselves. I have to remind myself, oh, do I still have a command of this? Do I still know how to recite this well? These are really important lessons, I think, that Shinran gave us, is that while, yes, and most importantly for myself, yes, I am a Jodo Shinshu priest, but that doesn't make me special, right? That doesn't make me better than you. But at the same time, right, at the same time, there also is this middle way where it's but usually for a Buddhist question, you may ask sensei. You usually would ask sensei about the doctrine or the teachings. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that, oh, I'm superior to you, or that I kind of don't, sometimes, this is a beautiful piece of woodwork up here and everything, but sometimes, in the new tradition now of Nishihonganji, they actually, when we do the Dharma Talk, we actually go down to the floor here, and we just have a table in front. And so it's not like I'm elevated over you. This is more dangerous for me, by the way, where I'm this could inflate my ego. But at the same time, right, I have to remember as well, as a Jodo Shinshu priest, that I am not enlightened. I am not a fully awakened Buddha. In fact, I'm probably the farthest thing from it. So I think this is why Shinran Shonin is so special to me and so special to all of us, because he still understood his ignorance as a regular human being. He still understood that he was filled with blind passions. He was still filled with the desires and the wants and the needs, or what we feel like we need in our everyday lives. So this is why I decided to read this postscript today from Shinran Shonin's Jodo Shinshu. And just to share with you a little bit on what I was doing in California for the past few days. It is a very long and hard process to train an upcoming priest. So I hope for those of you who are in the congregation who are interested in becoming Jodo Shinshu priests that I didn't scare you away, but but also please understand too, right, that there actually is quite a bit of work that does go into an ordination. So with that being said, would you all please join me in Gassho? Hence, I am now neither a monk nor one in worldly life. For this reason, I have taken the term Toku, stubble-headed, as my name. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandavs, namandavs, namandavs.